The Apex Racing Development Garage smelled like it always smelled: carbon fiber, engine oil, and the particular metallic sharpness of a space where serious work happened at serious speed. 40 feet of polished concrete floor. Blue steel rigging rising to a second level. A red and black GT3 sitting center stage with its hood open like a patient waiting for a surgeon. Mara Donnell walked in at 8:14 on a Wednesday morning wearing a suit that had not been designed for garages, her new operations director, Griffin Cole, 2 steps behind her holding a tablet like a man who believed tablets made him look essential. She had owned Apex for 14 months. She had inherited it, technically, her father's firm, built over 30 years, left to her when he suffered a stroke that took most of his language and all of his capacity to run a racing development company. She had spent those 14 months learning the business from the outside in, applying the same discipline that had made her successful in commercial real estate to a world that operated by entirely different physics. She was not afraid of the learning curve. She was afraid of the waste she kept finding at its edges. She was 3 steps onto the floor when she saw him. A man in a gray work shirt, dark with grease at the elbows and collar, was leaning over the engine bay of the GT3 with a torque wrench in one hand and his phone propped against the air filter housing, angled at what appeared to be a technical diagram. He was making adjustments to the intake manifold with the slow, deliberate attention of someone who was not in a hurry and had decided not to be. The rest of the floor had a schedule. The rest of the floor was running the Wednesday morning pre-qualification prep that Griffin had outlined in the operational review 2 days prior. 3 other mechanics worked at their designated stations. Everything was where it was supposed to be. Except this. Mara looked at Griffin. Griffin checked the tablet. The GT3 was not scheduled for engine work. The GT3 was scheduled for a suspension check and a tire rotation in preparation for the qualifier at Redstone Circuit on Saturday. The engine had been signed off as race-ready 6 days ago in the pre-event certification log. Griffin said the name quietly. Nate Calloway. Senior Build Technician. 8 years with Apex. Mara walked to the car. Nate became aware of her when she was 3 feet away. He straightened, turned, looked at her without alarm. He was 36 years old, broad through the shoulders, with the kind of face that didn't arrange itself into apology easily. He held the torque wrench at his side and looked at her the way a person looked at something they were waiting to understand. She pointed at the engine bay. This car was signed off. It was not scheduled for this work. We have a qualifier in 4 days and you have unilaterally opened a certified engine without authorization, without documentation, and apparently without telling anyone on the floor. Nate looked at the engine. Then back at her. I found a harmonic at 6,200 revolutions per minute during the final road test Tuesday afternoon. It wasn't in the telemetry because it only appears in a narrow band during load transition. If it opens up under race conditions at Redstone, the car loses 60-meter split timing on the back straight. At minimum. Griffin stepped forward. The certification was signed. If there was an anomaly you should have logged it and brought it to the operations meeting this morning. Nate looked at Griffin with the patient expression of a person who was deciding whether to explain something or simply let the moment pass. He appeared to decide on the former. The operations meeting is at 9. The qualifier is Saturday. I found the harmonic at 4:30 Tuesday afternoon. I opened the bay at 6 this morning when I had the time and the floor was clear. I didn't document it yet because I was going to document it when I was finished. Mara had been watching him through all of this. She had built her professional reputation on reading situations quickly and without sentiment, and what she was reading now was a man who was not apologizing, not explaining, and not performing either of those things. He was simply describing what he had done and why, in the manner of someone who found the logic so apparent that the need to defend it was itself the strange part. That quality, she had learned, could mean 2 things. It could mean the person was right. Or it could mean the person had been doing things their way for long enough that they had stopped being able to imagine another way was legitimate. She didn't yet know which this was. What she did know was that she was standing in front of a floor full of people who were watching this exchange, and that she had spent 14 months establishing that Apex had a process and that the process would be followed, and that one person's independent judgment, however experienced, could not be permitted to override the system she was trying to build. She straightened. "Box your tools," she said. "I'll need your access badge at the front desk by 9. The floor went quiet in the way floors went quiet when something irreversible had just been said in public. Nate looked at her for 2 seconds. Not with anger. Not with surprise. With the expression of a man who was filing something carefully before responding to it. He picked up the box that was already on the floor beside the car. He had come prepared, apparently, with organized tools for a specific job, and he walked to his station, added the wrenches he kept there, and closed the box with a quiet, final sound. He put the torque wrench on top. He looked at her once more across the floor. "I'd recommend not running above 6,400 on the back straight until that harmonic is resolved," he said. "It's in the third intake runner. 40 minutes of work." Then he picked up the box and walked toward the exit. The trouble started 2 hours later. Griffin had assigned the pre-qualifier check to the 3 remaining senior technicians, competent men, all of them, experienced and thorough in the way that the Apex floor had always been. They ran the suspension check. They ran the tire rotation. One of them, a man named Pavel, ran the standard engine diagnostic at Griffin's instruction, using the automated system, looking at the numbers on the screen. The numbers looked fine. At 11:30, Griffin came to Mara's office on the mezzanine level with his tablet and the expression of a man who was going to deliver information he had not yet decided how to frame. "The diagnostic is clean," he said. "Good," she said. He turned the tablet toward her. "But I asked Pavel to do a manual RPM load test. He found a harmonic at 6,200. Mara looked at the tablet. At the waveform graph. At the narrow spike in the frequency band, precise and consistent, appearing under load transition exactly where Nate had said it would appear. Griffin said, quietly, "The automated diagnostic doesn't catch it. It only shows in a live load test with manual monitoring. Which means the original certification missed it." Mara sat with this for a moment. "How long to fix it?" "Pavel says 40 minutes. Maybe 50. He's looking at the third intake runner." Mara put the tablet on her desk. She thought about a car running a qualifier at Redstone Circuit on Saturday with a harmonic that cost 60 meters on the back straight. She thought about the driver, a 23-year-old named Tomas who had been with Apex's development program for 2 years and for whom this qualifier was the most important race of his career so far. She thought about 40 minutes. Then she thought about Nate Calloway and a box of tools and a walk toward the exit. She said, "Find out what other cars he built." Griffin looked at her. "What?" "The personnel file. 8 years. Find out what he built." Griffin came back 20 minutes later and he no longer had the expression of a man managing information. He had the expression of a man who had encountered something he had not expected. "He built all of them," Griffin said. Mara looked at him. "Every race spec build in this facility for the last 6 years. The GT4 that won the regional series last year. The prototype that set the lap record at Harkin. The development car that Verano Racing bought in March. All of them. His certifications, his build logs, his sign-offs. He also designed the modified intake calibration system that Apex has been using since 2021, which is apparently the reason their build times are 30% below the regional average." Griffin placed a stack of printed build logs on her desk. Each one had the same name at the bottom. Nate Calloway. Senior Build Technician. Mara looked at the logs for a long time. Then she said, "Does he have children?" Griffin checked the file. "A daughter. 7 years old. Her name is Suki. He's been her sole parent since she was 4. She found him at 12:40. He was sitting in the parking lot in a truck that had been old for a while and didn't seem bothered by it, eating a sandwich with his daughter's name written on the paper bag in black marker, the bag obviously packed by someone who labeled things for a 7-year-old and hadn't removed the label before eating from it himself. He was looking at his phone, apparently reading something, with the same contained stillness he had carried on the floor. He looked up when she knocked on the window. He did not look pleased to see her. He did not look unpleased. He looked like a man who had already moved through the emotional landscape of the morning and arrived somewhere quieter on the other side. She asked if she could sit in the truck. He appeared to consider this as an interesting request. He unlocked the passenger door. She sat down. The truck smelled like coffee and the particular smell of a vehicle that belonged to a person who worked with their hands and brought the work home without noticing. She said, "The harmonic was exactly where you said it was. In the third intake runner. Pavel confirmed it an hour ago." Nate said nothing. 43 minutes to fix, she said. He's finishing now. She looked at the sandwich wrapper on the dash, the paper bag with Suki written on it, the folded diagram on the seat between them that she recognized as a modified intake calibration schematic. He had been working even in the parking lot. "I looked at your build history," she said. Nate ate a piece of his sandwich and waited. "Why didn't you say something?" she asked. "When I was standing in front of you. You built every car in that facility. You designed the calibration system. You could have said any of that." He looked at the windshield. "You'd already decided," he said. "The moment you pointed at the engine, you'd already decided. Telling you what I'd built wouldn't have changed the decision. It would have just made it look like I was trying to save myself. And you weren't." He looked at her for the first time since she'd gotten in the truck. "I was trying to make sure someone knew about the harmonic before Saturday. That was the thing that needed to be said. The rest of it," he paused, looking back at the windshield, "the rest of it isn't something I need to argue for." Mara sat with that for a moment. The parking lot was quiet. The city moved at its usual pace beyond the fence. She said, "I made a decision with incomplete information and I made it in public in a way that didn't leave room for the information to reach me before it was final. That was a failure of process on my part. Not yours." He looked at her. The expression on his face was the expression of a person receiving something they weren't sure what to do with yet. "I'd like you to come back," she said. "Not as a favor. Because you know things about this operation that I don't, and I've been running it for 14 months while those things existed in your head and not on my desk, and that arrangement doesn't work for either of us." He was quiet. "I'm also going to need the calibration documentation formalized," she said. "Everything that's in your head about how these cars are built. I should have asked for that in month 1. Nate folded the sandwich wrapper and put it in the bag with Suki written on it. He said, "The harmonic in the intake runner is a symptom of a resonance pattern that appears in high-load environments above 6,000 revolutions per minute in this engine family. I found it in 3 other cars last spring. I modified the runner geometry in those builds. This one had the older spec because it came in as a rebuild, not a new build. I flagged it in my personal log but it didn't make it into the formal certification. That's on me." "On me too," she said. "My certification process has no mechanism for catching what isn't in the automated diagnostic. You knew that. You've known it for how long?" He thought about it. "For years at least." She looked at him directly. "You should have told me." "I know," he said. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then Mara said, "Saturday. Tomas needs the car ready and I need the engineer who understands it in the building when it leaves for Redstone." Nate looked at the facility through the windshield. The blue steel of the upper rigging was visible above the roofline. The place he had spent 8 years inside, building things that in a language most of the people around him hadn't learned to read. He said, "Suki gets out of school at 3. She said, bring her." We have a desk on the mezzanine that's been used for storage since March. She can draw there while you finish the documentation. He looked at her with the measuring expression of a person deciding if a thing is what it appears to be. It appeared to be what it was. He picked up the calibration schematic from the seat between them, folded it once along a practiced crease, and put it in his shirt pocket. He said, "I'll need the full build history for the other 3 cars with the resonance pattern. I want to cross-check the runner specs before Redstone." She said, "Griffin will have it on your desk by 2. Nate opened the truck door. He stepped out. Looked back once. "The harmonic," he said. "In the GT3. It would have cost Tomas the back straight at Redstone. If the low transition hit at the wrong moment in race conditions, worst case it opens into a full resonance event and the car doesn't finish." She held his look. "I know." He nodded once. Not in gratitude. In the manner of 2 people who had arrived at an understanding that didn't require ornamentation. He walked back toward the facility with the schematic in his pocket and the measured pace of a man returning to work he had never actually stopped doing in his head. Tomas crossed the finish line at Redstone Circuit that Saturday in 3rd place. It was the best result of his career. In the debrief afterward, he told the team that the car had felt different on the back straight, cleaner through the power band, more responsive through load transition. He couldn't name exactly what it was. He just knew the car had given him everything he asked for. On the mezzanine level at Apex, a 7-year-old named Suki sat at a desk that had recently been cleared of storage boxes, drawing something with colored pencils while her father worked at the station beside her. She had drawn a red race car with a very large number 3 on the door and a sun above it that took up most of the sky. She showed it to Nate and he looked at it with the careful attention he gave to everything. He told her it was accurate. She said she knew. She picked up a blue pencil and added a small figure beside the car, standing with their arms at their sides, and then another figure taller than the first, standing 1 step behind. She labeled the taller one Dad in large uneven letters and did not label the car because the car, in her understanding, did not require a label. Everyone could see what it was.